Andy Campbell! It's in! Campbell comes off the bench to be a hero! A superhero! Breakthrough! It's taken a while, but it's been worth the wait for Cardiff City!
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, the home of the Andy Campbell Football Show. This is episode number 72. Show's available live on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, Periscope. A.C.E Podcast Nation, also your home to many great shows and series featuring top guests, expert analysts and more. So please do give us a follow on social media and most of all, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation. Click the bell to get notification every time we upload a new show or clips and exclusive interviews as well. You can also get the audio version of every single show we do as your favourite radio and podcast platform. The links to all of that and a bit more are in the description below and also in the closing credits at the end of the show. And of course, you can follow the Andy Campbell shows at A.C.E Footy Show on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Just as we wait for the live chats to fill up on the various platforms, big thank you to Black Diamond Sports for all their support around the show. Black Diamond Sports is a global sports agency which represents sports stars from around the world. For more information, you can visit their social media pages and also their brand new website, links to which are again in the description and also in the closing credits. We are sponsored today, as every week, for the Andy Campbell shows by Bespoke Financial. Bespoke Financial is specialised in life insurance, critical illness, income protection, mortgages and sports cover. And here's a quick word from them.
My mummy and daddy have been talking about life insurance. It sounds like something to protect my brother and me, but I don't really understand. Then my auntie Louise told mummy about Bespoke Financial Teesside. She said they're a local company who helped her with her life insurance. Mummy got in touch, and because they're based locally, a man called Darren was able to come to our house. He was really friendly. Darren stayed for a cup of tea and made it all really easy to understand. He said that life insurance will protect our home and family if anything bad were to happen. Like if mummy or daddy got sick, then we'd get enough money to take care of us and our house would be paid for so we wouldn't get taken away. After an hour, Darren said goodbye and mummy and daddy seemed a lot happier. Once it was all sorted, we could all relax and watch a film together as a family. I don't know why they didn't do it sooner.
Big thank you to Bespoke Financial, of course. They sponsor this show and the Championship show every Friday. We appreciate their sponsorship and their support, and I urge you to check them out. They already dominate the Teesside scene in regards to insurance and mortgage protection, things like this, and sports cover particularly. And they're looking to grow in other cities around the UK, including Cardiff. So check them out because they really are the top of the field, and I ain't just saying that. So, with no further ado, first of all, I'd like to introduce my co-host as usual, the goal collector, the fox in the box, still the king of the Millennium Stadium, Davy Jones' favourite son, the goal machine of Middlesbrough over 40s, Andrew Campbell. How goes it, my friend?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, this is an exciting one for me because this is like watching a proper player. You know what I mean? I've called him a few things on social media over the last couple of days, and I can't wait to dig deep and get the feeling of stuff because it's you know what I mean. It's going to be really exciting.
Oh yes. Like my oldest son called me a fanboy today because I haven't stopped going on about it all day, which kind of put me in my place.
That's what I feel like every week, though. I feel like this every week because I'm like a kid in a sweet shop. So
yeah. Well, as I was just saying, when we were talking amongst ourselves before we went live, like I remember our guest coming through for the youth team at United and all the way through. Exceptionally talented footballer, which I'm looking forward to speaking to. So tonight's guest started his professional career at Manchester United before playing for a slew of clubs, top clubs indeed, including Wigan Athletic, Newcastle Utd, Blackburn Rovers, Leicester City, Sheffield United and more. Made over 500 career appearances, scoring 31 goals, represented Northern Ireland 86 times. The wing wizard himself, Mr. Keith Gillespie. How goes it, Keith? Are you alright, mate?
Hi guys, all good?
Great to have you on,
Okay.
Keith. You know, listen, we don't get the kind of stats that I'm probably looking for. You know, that goal stats are great. You know what I mean? Keith scored some absolute worldies, by the way, because I've been doing a bit of research. I've been bamboozled by some of the goals you've scored, but the assists, I'd love to see the rate of assists and the amount of crosses you put in the box for X, Y, and Z, because it's, as a winger, you're obviously judged, aren't you, by
Exactly.
the kind of player that you were, really.
Oh, exactly. And, you know, when you had certain players in the box, like, you know, Les Ferdinand, Alan Shearer, people like that, you know, they need crosses into the box. So that was my job. But, I mean, I used to get as much buzz as setting up a goal as I did scoring a goal.
Does it make your job easy then, Keith, then? Because obviously, you know what I mean, you've just named those two names there, you know what I mean, Shearer, Ferdinand, those kind of players, you know what I mean, there comes pressure, doesn't it? Because if you don't put the ball where they want it, you know what I mean, I'm guessing they're going to tell you in no uncertain terms as well, you know?
Oh, you're right. Absolutely. You know, you have to put the crosses into the right place. But, you know, on the other hand, you can have a go at them for not being there sometimes.
Yeah. That's totally agree.
So it works both
Totally
ways.
Do you think, Keith, these days, like, everything's stat-based, isn't it? And I think sometimes, like, wingers, they get a lot more appreciation these days for the amount of assists they provide. Whereas maybe sort of when, particularly earlier on in your career, stuff wasn't as stat-based on TV and even with coaching and stuff. So I think you'd probably get a bit more appreciation, or even more appreciation, for the amount of assists that you did get now than perhaps you did in those earlier days.
Yeah, you know, I sort of do a podcast with the guys in Newcastle every week, so I do, and they were sort of talking about the 95-96 season when we just brought Ginola in, and he was, you know, absolutely, you know, incredible player. But the guys were actually to give me stats on, you know, they were talking after about the first 14 games how good Ginola was, and I mean, I didn't know the stats until they told me, but the first 14 games he'd played 13 and scored 2 and had 5 assists. And I didn't even know that the first 14 I'd played 14, scored 3 and had 9 assists and got one penalty as well.
Wow.
So it's you know, that's something that, as you say, nowadays people know all these assists and how many times, you know, it could hit your backside and go to somebody, and you know, it counts as an assist nowadays. But for me, you know, proper assists for me was, you know, going down the line, getting crosses in, and somebody firing a header in the middle of the box or something.
But you look at that though, don't you? I just mentioned there the Opta. You know what I mean? You look at the stats on Sky is dribbles. You know what I mean? They use that as a stat now, and dribble. You know what I mean? Every time you got the ball, if you got the ball on the right wing back area, you know what I mean, back in the day, then you're driving towards the fullback. That's a dribble. You know what I mean? You don't have to beat players. You know what I mean? You know yourself from your United days, from your Newcastle days. You know what I mean? I remember that you were great at just getting a space and whipping the ball in. You know what I mean? If that was beating the fullback or not beating the fullback, it doesn't really matter. As long as you get the ball in the box in the right place at the right time, it's an assist, it's a cross, it's a creating chance.
Well, exactly. You know, especially at Newcastle, you know, when I had Kevin Keegan as a manager, I think wingers, you know, we can be a wee bit up and down, because sometimes you can have days where you just can't get anything right, you know, trying to beat a fullback. You know, I was fortunate that I was sort of quicker than most fullbacks, and I didn't really have much of a trick. It was sort of more a drop the shoulder and just try and whip it in. But Kevin Keegan was great in giving you the encouragement, because he would say to you, I don't care if you lose it 9 times out of 9, that 10th time you'll probably create a goal for us. So that's what wingers really need.
Does that fill you full of confidence, though, Keith? You know what I mean? Having somebody who backs you. You know what I mean? Having you know what I mean? You know yourself from playing, from coaching, etc. That having the backing of somebody who knows that the game's a 90-minute game. It might not be the first minute or the 70th minute, but as long as you do carry on and continue, you might get that bit of fortune towards the end of the game. Yeah,
and you know, working under Kevin Keegan, he gave you, you know, the most encouragement that I've ever had with the manager. You know, you would have run through a brick wall for him. And as I say, wingers, you know, we can be up and down where things don't go right, but you know, if you have somebody like him, and especially in the side that we played in, because you know, we were sort of attack that's what we wanted to do. We had the players to go and attack, and we played a 4-4-2. Janol on the left, myself on the right, and the first year it was Les Ferdinand and Peter Beardsley in the middle. With Rob Lee, arriving late as well. So we had a fantastic side. So it was great to be involved in a side like that, where because I'm such a forward-thinking player. If you ventured back sort of over the halfway line defensively, he'd be telling you to get back up the pitch again.
Thing is, it's interesting there, though, saying it that Keith mentioned there about the assist stats of the season of the first 9 games with you and obviously David Ginola. You know what I mean? That 9 and 4. You know what I mean? Goals, penalties, chances. You know what I mean? And they're not obviously goals what have scored as well. So there must have been loads of chances created which have gone by the wayside and missed as well. So it's no wonder that Newcastle with this free scoring, attacking, entertaining side, when you've got people who are creating chances for the people in the middle, it must have been an absolute dream for the centre forwards to play with. It must have been great. It must have been absolutely great.
Did you not get that at Cardiff, fans?
No. Well, I didn't like to head the ball. So what I mean. My game wasn't made for Keith to. I wouldn't have enjoyed playing with Keith in terms of he's crossing the ball and I'm ducking out the way of a header. So I probably wouldn't have. So Keith would have had a go at me. It wouldn't have been the other way around. Keith would have had a go at me because I would have made him look bad.
You were just sort of more over the top, rather.
Yeah, I was quite direct. So it was quite. You know what I mean. And this is the thing, is that every player has a team and a situation which suits them, and I see you. You know what I mean. The Newcastle for me suited you with the players that were brought in. That you know what I mean. I was suited to the way that the teams played. There were balls over the top in the channels, playing a different kind of way. And you look at players now that if you put Mohamed Salah, for example, in a different team, he probably wouldn't flourish and score as many goals as he is for Liverpool because
did he?
He doesn't know.
He did all right at Roma and Chelsea, but he didn't really look the player that he has recently.
And you can say that about De Bruyne as well, and Lukaku, and these kind of players who've been to Chelsea and I wouldn't say failed because that's not a very good word, but
they just did.
You know what I mean? It just didn't work out for whatever reason. If that's because of what we just mentioned, then so be it. But no, there's moments for everybody which do take over, and it's great to see because it's why we watch football, isn't it? It's why we watch it to be entertained. It's the best thing in the world.
Oh, absolutely. As I say, I was fortunate to play with. You talk about you wouldn't be heading the ball, but in the box, when you've got people like Les Ferdinand and Shearer who thrive on that, they thrive on crosses and getting on the end of crosses. It was an absolute dream to play with them, and then after that, obviously Tino Asprilla as well, who was a real character.
I'm going to ask you about him later on.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that side. So we're going to start, Si, aren't we, with the viewers get to know Keith a little bit. So I'll let you take over, Si.
Yeah. So what we like to do, Keith, Magnificent Seven quick fire questions. You just say the first thing which comes to mind, and lets the viewers get to know you a little bit. Okay. Keith Gillespie, the Magnificent Seven. Always nice and easy to start. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
Manchester United or Newcastle? Keith, can I just stop? And this might give you an opportunity to think of the answer, but some of these Magnificent Sevens are brutal, and I will take credit for a couple of the questions, by the way. And this is this is one of them.
Right, Man United.
Favorite TV show?
I agree.
Favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show? Gosh, I'm not really one for TV. I sort of just watch Netflix all the time. So at the minute, I'm watching Queen of the South. So that's my favorite at the minute.
Angriest teammate?
Angriest teammate? Stuart Pearce. When he was in Newcastle.
Doesn't get much angrier than that, does it?
No.
Kevin Keegan or Alex Ferguson? That was
this is vicious.
Kevin Keegan.
Yeah, I like that. I like that one.
Ryan Giggs, Andre Kanchelskis or Lee Sharp?
I have to go Giggsy.
Imagine all three together, though. They would make they'd make some player, wouldn't they?
Oh, unreal.
These days, they'd probably play behind one striker, just behind with three of them behind, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Well, they'd all get to play this time, wouldn't they? Instead of one of them missing out. So it probably would suit, wouldn't it?
And the final question, it's the easiest of a lot. The greatest Northern Irishman to ever live.
Oh,
Question. It's a good question.
George Best.
On that note, Keith. So, and I want to throw it at you because there's always the comparison with obviously the way that you played football that people compared you to. Obviously, George. You know what I mean? Growing up when you came through as a young player, obviously from Ireland and then moving over to United. Obviously, the links were matched for various reasons. But how did you take that on board? Did you feel pressure? Did you just take it in your stride? How did it make you feel?
No, I think in terms of being from Northern Ireland and going to Man United, it's just something that happens to everyone. I think before me, you had the likes of Norman Whiteside, who was a completely different player to George Best. He got called the new George Best, so that was just something that, I was probably a little bit more similar, obviously, because we were both wingers, we both liked the dribble with the ball. It did become my actual nickname with a lot of boys at clubs. Chris Sutton actually nicknamed me Bestie when I went to Blackburn, and it stuck ever since. But I probably like to say, or I probably say that I maybe tried to emulate him off the pitch rather than on the pitch. But that's another story.
which is not a bad thing, by the way, because he's obviously a legend on and off it. But no, I think it's obviously when players give you these kind of nicknames and things, it's more of a humorous thing, isn't it? It's more of a a bit of banter, and when you do perform and you don't perform, and it shows for me a bit of neutral respect, and I like that. It's when especially nowadays with social media and you look at some of the young English players who are getting mentioned in the likes of so many other players, and it puts them under so much pressure nowadays. And I just think it's unfair because the amount of mental stress on young players at the minute is just outrageous, because they've got the social media aspect, they've got their peer pressure, they've got all the pressures what come with football, and for me, it's just they're in a losing mentality or a losing start before they start get going, really.
Yeah, I think it's tougher now to be a young player, coming through with social media, and eyes are on you all the time. We only have to see what's happened in the last sort of few weeks with the England boys. Yeah. We were talking about it before we come on there. We were quite fortunate we had no social media about when we were playing.
Well, that just goes in nicely to talk about obviously what happened. So obviously, the major incident was obviously Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood obviously in the being away with England, and then this week Mason Greenwood's been pictured, videoed, and the story was in the Sun about with a helium balloon or some kind of balloon. And from my point of view, guys, I just think this lad, yes, he's made mistakes, but he's going to make mistakes, and he's going to make more mistakes, by the way, before he finishes his career. So let him get on, play football, make a few mistakes on the pitch, and continue to make them off the pitch, as long as he's not really hurting anybody. You know what I mean? He's not hurting anybody. He's doing these things in his own time. He's probably put these videos all over his social media, and you know what I mean? I just think sometimes you just give that lad a break and let him enjoy his football, But one thing I will say, the Jack Grealishes, the Harry Maguires, they must be delighted when they see these kind of stories, because it's take the pressure, and it's took the pressure right off these kind of fellas.
Yeah, I think we all know what the press are like. They just jump on everything, and there's been so much talk with Mason Greenwood over the last 6 to 8 months about how well he's done, and they're going to want to sort of try and bring him down. That's what the press do. They build you right up, and then they, at the first opportunity they have, they knock you back down again. So I think he's obviously at the right club in Man United, who will protect him from all that. But I'm sure they will, be warning about his conduct. But at the end of the day, he is a young lad, and you've hit the nail on the head. He is going to make mistakes, and you're right, he will make more. But I think as long as he does the business on the pitch, we can see already. He's going to be a fantastic player. And he's not even playing his natural position at the minute. Because we know he is a striker, but he seems to have done a lot of damage so far on that right hand side, cutting in on his left foot, and even going outside and scoring goals as well. So he's going to be a top player. But these things happen.
I wanted to ask you both as ex-players, because obviously you've got, in many ways, a different way of looking at the press to people like myself who have only really ever watched football, certainly at a professional level. Like for me, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about the difference in coverage of Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood, and then the coverage which people like Raheem Sterling have received over the years, and a couple of other players as well. And do you think that the way they have both been portrayed has been so different? Do you think it's because of Mason Greenwood's ethnicity, or is there a legitimate reason why one would be kind of singled out more than the other? And you go first, mate.
I hope it's not because of that reason. I just think they're trying to play on people's weaknesses, and they're trying to really hurt somebody's career for me. And it doesn't sit right with me. For me, you know what I mean? We just said there, Keith just agreed that players are going to make mistakes because they're human. You know what I mean? These are young lads. You know what I mean? Everything's being thrown at them at a young age, and more, by the way. You know what I mean? Because we're on about what it was like when we played. Well, yeah, you know what I mean. You've got social media, you've got money left, right, and centre. You've got big houses, big cars. You've got the expectation. They're going to make a mistake, and when they do make a mistake, they're getting hounded. And yes, there's a place and a time, and the club is there to tell them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. But for me, I don't know. Let the papers give them an opportunity to flourish, because you know what I mean. The papers go on about, in England especially, about why we've underachieved playing in World Cups and European Championships. Well, this is the reason why, because we've got some opportunities here to let these players flourish and become world class footballers. Because if they got an opportunity, let them flourish and become it, and then we've got a chance to win something. Because at the minute we're never going to win anything, because players won't want to. Are scared to perform at that kind of level because of the stick they're getting off the newspapers and stuff.
Yeah, would you go along with that, Keith?
Yeah, totally. These players have only become sort of really well known in the last year. Mason Greenwood, just maybe in the last sort of 6 to 8 months. So I said it before, the press are always going to want to the new kids coming through, they'll want to find something on them. They'll want to knock them off their perch. That's what the press have done for years, and they'll always do that. We know what journalists can be like. They're just always looking for that next story. And
what players need to do, Keith? What players need to do? They need to understand, and they have been advised, because they start to get advised really early about social media and things. And if you've got any old videos on your social media, just wipe it off. Start. You know what I mean? Because these kind of stories could be 4 or 5 years old. You just don't know how long these things are. But because they put out the weekend, you know what I mean? They look like that he's done this and done that. They could have had hold of that video and then photos for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he won't have known about it. And then all of a sudden, bang, he looks like he's doing 2 things wrong in 2 weeks, and they've just waited for the timing. Because papers sell, stories sell, footballers certainly sell. Of course it does. And, especially when there's no fans going into stadiums, fans rely on social media, rely on TV, rely on newspapers now just to entertain them, and they're not entertaining them. They're just being negative on everything. I don't like them.
Keith, what did Fergie do? Like, obviously you broke into the first team age 17. What sorts of things would he do to keep you kind of on the straight and narrow when you're really young? Like, obviously he famously kept Ryan Giggs from the press. Felt like for like half his career, but like it was those early days of his career, he wasn't allowed to do any interviews really. Like, what sort of things would he do to kind of keep you focused on football? Well,
he actually sorted it out for. I mean, there was 8 of us signed all professional contracts at the same time. Beckham, Scholes, Nicky Butt, Gary Neville, John O'Kane, Chris Casper, Ben Thornley, and myself. And we actually did media training at one stage.
Sorry there, Keith. What a group of players that is, by the way. Oh my God. Oh my
Wasn't
Lord.
bad.
That's a youth team. That was a youth team.
Quite
outrageous. That's outrageous. No wonder you won the Youth Cup.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad side. But we actually had media training at one stage, to just try and help us. Because it's something that, throughout football, it's something that's always going to be there, the media attention that you're going to get. So,
Did it help, Keith? Did it help, though? Because obviously you got some players who, and this isn't a negative, by the way, some players love going in front of the camera, like obviously Gary Neville, it comes natural to him. Obviously Phil, Bex has done the same thing, but Scholesy, Nicky Butt, they kept themselves out of it because they didn't like that attention. So, was it Was it to tell them how to do it, or was it telling them the pros and cons as well? How did it work?
A bit of both. As you say, Scholesy, I'm amazed he's gone into sort of TV, because
I know.
You count on one hand how many interviews he did over the years. He just wasn't comfortable in front of the camera, just didn't want to do it. And some players are like that, but I think at times you just after a game, if you've scored the winning goal, straight away they're going to be wanting to interview the person who has scored that goal. But Scholesy would sort of just shy away from that. So it did help, of course it did. But it wasn't that long that I left the club afterwards and went to Newcastle, and that was obviously a huge deal. It was a British transfer record for a striker at the time, with Andy Cole and myself going the other way. So straight away, although I'd sort of made some appearances in United's first team, you're in the public figure even more now because of the how big this sort of transfer was. So there was plenty of sort of interviews and stuff to do when I left the club. So it is something that probably did benefit me along the way.
Great answer. And I like that though, because I think it's not everyone's cup of tea, is it? That when a TV or a phone or something's shoved into your face, you've got to know the answers before because you don't know the questions. You know what I mean? It's on live TV, so it's if you've scored the winning goal, it's great because you're still buzzing, the adrenaline. If you've just set a goal up, if you've just got man of the match, it's or if you're a little bit composed. But if you don't like that kind of situation, I can imagine it can be quite unnerving. For people as well.
Yeah, I think some players are a lot more shy than other players, and they just don't feel comfortable in front of a camera. So I think just the more that you do it, the more you just get used to that sort of thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do totally agree with that as well. And I think it's like this as well. That when you do we've all been on lockdown, haven't we? So Zoom calls left, right, and centre because we haven't been able to go and visit people, and podcasts obviously are taken over and other kind of things. And I think the more you talk to people on a screen or see other people, it could just become a bit more natural. That we used to sit down probably and have a conversation, or we used to pick the phone up and have a conversation. This way is probably a more grown up natural progression for me, which is great.
Unfortunately, this could start to be the norm too much.
I said that today. Actually, I think this isn't going anywhere, is it? Let's be honest, and I do believe this is the new norm. Unfortunately, what I mean. And I think for kids and for our kids, it's just it's not nice, and it's you know what I mean. And they're the people I feel sorry for. I'm not saying we've lived a life, but we've lived a normal life. You know what I mean, for 40 plus years. So it's nice to be able to have that experience, but now it's all surreal for us as well. So it's very strange, very strange.
Okay, so we're gonna, before we move on to your career, Keith, we're just gonna do a quick bit of any other business. But just before we do, I'm gonna do some questions from the people a bit later on, sort of in between the shows. But one which was just about something you just said. You named those 8 players who you all signed together. And
Outrageous.
Craig Sullivan asked, what would you say was the transfer value of that youth team in today's market?
Gosh.
If you break it down individually, maybe it'll be easier. So,
imagine though, Keith, as well, if you could have kept that team together. Imagine if they could have kept that team together and called it whatever team, and just seen how far that team could have gone together at the same age. Where could that group have gone? Because you know yourself, don't you, that the more you play together, the better you become as well. And it's endless, isn't it?
I mean, it's crazy because the actual, in 92, when we won the Youth Cup, Scholesy couldn't get in the team. And Giggsy was in the team that year as well, because he was a year older than us. Most of us were sort of first-year apprentices. But, breaking it down, obviously Beckham, gosh.
100 million plus, isn't he?
Without a shadow of a doubt. The same with Paul Scholes. He was.
But it's when you
one
get
of the best players the Premiership's seen.
Yeah, it's when you get people like Iniesta. When Iniesta's saying that he's the best person he's played against, it just says it all, doesn't it?
I think Zidane said the same. Zidane was asked what it was like to be the best player in the world, and he says, "Ask Paul Scholes."
Yeah, that's just
outrageous. Gary Neville. Has there been a sort of more consistent, better right back in the Premiership over the years. You know, when you have the longevity that these players have had at one club, and that one club being one of the biggest clubs in the world, that shows you, you know, how good they were. Nicky Butt obviously went on to Newcastle, you know, but was a fantastic player. He was probably his first year apprentices. He was probably the pick of everyone because physically he was a lot bigger than us.
Was he underrated, Keith, as well? In your
I think
opinion?
I think he was.
Is that because he didn't get the limelight, because he didn't score the goals, because he didn't do the assists?
Yeah, you know, he's probably underrated by others, but you sort of seen how important he was at the club to Alex Ferguson and his teammates. You know, he was a fantastic player, Nicky, and you know, we were, you know, Man United's always going to be littered with great players, but when you can bring through those sort of players, you know, Beckham, Scholes, Nicky Butt, Gary Neville, Ryan, there's 5, you know, who had unbelievable careers at that club.
It'll never happen again, I don't think.
No. I mean, you think about probably how much they did save.
Not forgetting Robbie Savage. Welsh Robbie Savage.
Yeah.
Yes, well, I roomed with Sav, so it did, and Diggs for a couple of years. So,
but that was dangerous.
Oh, we used to have to be down at the training ground at 9:15, and you know, we're talking it was about 500 yards away, but he'd be up at 8:30, and I'd be crawling out of bed at sort of 9 o'clock. But my alarm call was his hairdryer going off every morning. He was as obsessed then as he is now. Quality.
That's brilliant. Love that.
Okay, before we dig deep into Keith's career, and then we'll answer the people's questions as we go through. For any other business this week, instead of picking a story for me and Andy to pick, we decided we would ask our guest. So, Keith, what has caught your eye from the football world over the weekend?
I think probably most people were actually talking about Leeds, you know, being back in the Premier League. And I watched the game, and you know, they were fantastic.
Yeah, they were.
You know, I've been there before, scoring 3 goals at Anfield and losing. You know, it's when you score 3 goals away from home, you shouldn't really be losing games. But you know, I think they're going to be, you know, great for the Premier League this season. Just Bielsa, you know, the way he likes to play football. You know,
so why did they lose, Keith? Why did they lose? Because I looked at obviously with Keith coming on, that they reminded me a little bit of the way that Newcastle did play. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you just said there about Newcastle went there and got beat 4-3. It seemed like that in the way the game was going, that even at 3-3, there was always going to be another goal. It didn't seem that they were shutting up for some reason. No. I don't know why.
I always felt Liverpool would get the winner. You know, it was a pretty stupid challenge. So it was.
Yeah, he turned his back.
Because it wasn't like he was going to score or anything.
No.
You know, and I think somebody would have got a block on if he was trying to shoot. But you know, for me, Leeds the other day against Leeds, I think at times they will get caught out. You know, this where it used to be the goalkeeper used to just put the ball in the 6-yard box and kick it up, and now with this new rule where you can play it, you know, to somebody still in the box. The way sort of Liverpool were pressing, they were winning the ball really high up again, and I feel as if, you know, the ball was going back to the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper was then giving the ball away, and you know, that's something that, you know, clubs will maybe look at, you know, the way they do try and play out. You know, there's times where you've just got to go, right, we've just got to get up the pitch here, you know, and especially when you're playing against the Premier League champions, and we know what a high press they do most of the time. You know, they're going to be all over that.
I totally agree. And could you see, you know what I mean, obviously it wasn't like that obviously when we played, you know what I mean, and I'd have loved that, because with obviously the pace that I had and you had, you know what I mean, that I could probably pretend that I wasn't interested, and all of a sudden I could be there in a flash, same as you, that if with the fullback getting a short ball from a goalkeeper, and I think I would have loved something like this to be involved in when I played, because I think you get more chances by a defensive mistake than you would the way that we had to try and create our own chances.
Without a doubt, because as I said to you, it was normally, how many times did goalkeepers take short, you know, goal kicks? They didn't. They just kicked it up the ball, and you know, somebody went up for a header, and then you fought for the second ball. Whereas now every club's doing it, and you sort of see yourself in terms of the goalkeepers how good they are with their feet. You know, that wasn't the case sort of years ago. Where you know, you look at sort of somebody like Ederson, who as good as anybody at pinging the ball. You know, he does that diagonal to one of the fullbacks who's pushed on.
The range of his passing is just outrageous. You know, he's a like Stevie Gerrard in goal. His passing is just outrageous, and it's just, you know yourself, Keith. You know what I mean? And I had this conversation with a couple of goalkeepers about 6 months ago, that goalkeepers back in the day they always used to be at the back in pre-season. The slowest. They couldn't join in with keep ball because they always get the ball away. They're always in the middle and keep ball squares. And you see them now; they're the best players on the pitch. They're the fittest. The down for training the first. They come in last. It's just being a goalkeeper now is not as easy as what it used to be. No. You know what I mean? It used to be just basically a bit of a jolly up, but now it's a real serious business now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to be at the back of the training with them pre-season.
I was further back. I was all for the sprints. I couldn't do pre-season.
It was the same way.
Nightmare, mate. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't get my lungs just wouldn't work, and I think it was only when I got a little bit. Yeah, it was only when I got a little bit older, and I started to probably enjoy my running and start to do a few miles or a few K in the bank, and I thought if I could have been this fit, as in long distance fitness, maybe it would have improved me, but I would have rather been quick and in short bursts and manage a game than someone who can run one pace for 80, 90 minutes. That didn't interest me, that. Yeah,
that was exactly my thoughts as well. That was my reasoning behind being so bad at long distance.
I just said, wait till we do the short stuff, and I'll come alive.
Exactly.
That's all I used to
do. So Keith, before we get right into your career, I'd like to know, what is your earliest football-related memory, whether it's watching, playing, an incident, anything?
Yeah, the first time I sort of even remember watching football was 1982 World Cup in Northern Ireland v Spain, when Northern Ireland beat Spain.
Yeah.
You know, and I was 7 years of age, so that's my first memory, and you know, it's a great memory to have. You know, Northern Ireland going to the World Cup in Spain and beating the host nation, and qualifying for, you know, the quarterfinals. You know, and it's a great feat. You know, when you look at the sort of size of the country, that, you know, I think we've been to 3 World Cups. I know one was back in 1958, 82, 86, but we've been to 2 quarterfinals. You know, so it's a great feat. You know, when you're sort of 1.7, 1.8 million people. You know, and you can compete like that.
How important was that then for like development as a young schoolboy? Because you said you're 7-year-old. You know, so how important was that for you and people that you grew up with, wanting to play football and wanting to emulate what those guys had just achieved?
Yeah, you know, sort of at 7 years of age, you don't have any thoughts about being a professional footballer really, because you know, you sort of think the chances are very minimal, or really minimal.
You just want to be Dave McCreary and just smashing people left, right, and centre.
Yeah, but I mean that was it. You know, when you were a kid, because you were just always out the street and you were kicking the ball about. You know, it's a little bit different now. With you don't see young people out kicking the ball in the street now. You know, they're probably on their Xboxes and what have you. But that's all it was. You were out every day kicking the ball about. You know, and as I say, you're sort of too young to think of, you know, wanting to become a professional footballer. I mean, that sort of, it's maybe a few more years down the line, but it's certainly that, you know, with the country doing so well at 82 and then obviously qualifying 86, you know, it's something that my childhood, you know, unfortunately we didn't qualify for a major finals again until France there in 2016. So, you know, other younger people growing up didn't have those memories of what I did. You know, seeing my country at a you know, a major tournament,
which is important, though, isn't it? You know, I think, and I'm spoiled because there's only one World Cup that England haven't qualified for, when obviously
America
won, which, you know, I mean, they haven't achieved, and I do hope in my lifetime that I will get to see them getting a World Cup final or better. But for me, I've been spoilt with the amount of exciting football and the excitement every couple of years with European Championships, World Cups and stuff. You know, I know everyone reverts back to '66 and etc. But it is what it is, and you know what I mean. I do hope that I do get fortunate enough to see somebody win it, and I know, but you know yourself, Keith, that how much of a buzz it gives a country and an area and school kids and generations, and I just hope it can happen for everybody, really.
Oh, without a doubt, you only have to look at 2016 in France, because we had Wales, Republic of Ireland, England and Northern Ireland. So
It was incredible.
The more sort of home nations that can get into major finals at the one time, the better, because just everywhere is absolutely buzzing. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be working over in France at the Northern Ireland games during it all, so I was in amongst it all. So I was just, I was lucky to play sort of 86 times in my country, but once you sort of stop, you become a fan again. So here I was, going to watch, my country playing in a major tournament, and it was just a, incredible time.
It was absolutely incredible. I had given up hope of ever seeing Wales qualify for a major tournament. I'm 40 next year, and I never thought it was going to happen. And it's happened twice since then, including obviously France and the one coming up, hopefully next summer. So yeah, I think the Euros and the major tournaments as a Welshman has changed for me now, because previously I was kind of, all I used to hear was England, and then when I was little, Scotland would get there occasionally, Ireland would generally be there, and then sort of more recently Northern Ireland have made it, and then kind of like it was building up to the big boys of Wales joining the team, taking over, getting to the semi-final.
Yeah.
And semi-finals, and that's what it's about. Semi-finals of the Euros, mate. Maybe one year for you. Right. We've got a few questions going. So Keith, because there's so many, I don't want to leave them all to the end, because otherwise we'll be stacked up. So very quickly then we'll go. Warren Lewis asked, what did Keith Gillespie think of the atmosphere at Ninian Park? I'm sure he played there when he was with Leicester City, possibly Sheffield United as well.
Do you know what? I actually never played there, I don't think.
Did you not? I know you were on the bench one time, Sheffield United, I think it was. But
I remember Sheffield United, we actually went to Cardiff and we won 1-0. I think Danny Webber scored, and that guaranteed his promotion back to the Premier League. But I don't know whether I was injured or probably just left out that day. But I don't think I was there. I remember watching the game. So I can't actually remember being there, to be honest.
Right, okay. That's interesting, see, because a lot of people, Andy was just having some audio issues. I wondered why he wasn't reacting to my goading of England, but he's going to come back in now. So that's surprising to me, because everyone who we generally ask that, because people always ask that question, and generally people seem to have some sort of memory of Ninian Park on the whole. So that's interesting. I like that. Let's have a look what else we got. Stuart Campbell, which is Andy's dad, asks, there are not many out-and-out wingers around now. Who is the player that is most like yourself in today's game?
Ooh, good question.
Keith, don't say that just because it's my dad. This is the only relevant question he's ever done to anybody, by the way.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing. They're just clubs play all these different formations now, and you don't get a team ever playing 4-4-2 anymore.
No.
You sort of look at Liverpool, the formation they play. Their fullbacks are their wingers at times. For me, who would be as sort of direct as me? I was obviously very direct. I think somebody like Traore's very direct. I like watching him. He gets the ball, and he's a real strong boy. So he is, a lot stronger than I was. As I mentioned before, I was sort of just to drop the shoulder. So I like players who are just very direct. He's one that would sort of come to mind, being sort of direct as I was. But in terms of others, I can't really think of too many wingers about. I think I'm quite fortunate, that I played when I did, because with the way clubs play now, I'm not sure where I would actually play in teams.
On that then, Keith, do you feel as though then that the fullbacks get away a little bit, they get away a little bit cheaply, that instead of being a winger hugging the touchline like you were, Giggsy was, Kanchelskis was, other players were at the time, Ginola, that the fullback knew he was in for a game from the first minute to the last minute, where now you can have players interchange and moving from left to right, coming off the lines, coming inside. And for me, fullbacks don't get, apart from Traore, I don't think there's anybody else probably in the league who's just constantly running at a fullback that knows that you're going to be in for a game for a full 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I think you could argue, we know how good sort of Trent Alexander-Arnold is going forward, but, there's probably still question marks about him defensively. Mm-hmm. But he's in the team for what he does going forward. Yeah. And normally as a fullback, first and foremost, your job is to defend, but he doesn't have to do that very much. He doesn't have sort of wingers running at him all the time. And we've seen how sort of deadly he is with him and Robertson with the sort of balls that they play. And I would probably say that Robertson is probably a better defender than Alexander-Arnold and offers pretty much as what Alexander-Arnold does going forward. So I think fullbacks do get it easier now, because you think years ago and players rocking up at Old Trafford and the right backs looking going, I've got Ryan Giggs up against me today, and
then he'd look at
they're
the
not having that.
Yeah, but then other players, you look at United under Fergie. You know what I mean? For me, it simplified it for his own players, because he'd have Gary Neville. You know what I mean? Stick to his strengths. He knew he's a defender, so he'd defend and pass to you. He'd pass to Bex. He'd pass to Kanchelskis. Phil Neville or Dennis Irwin would pass to Sharpie. Would pass to Giggsy. They simplified their game and they knew the job.
That's exactly what you wanted. When I played at Newcastle, I had Warren Barton behind me.
Yeah,
and he just give me the ball. John
Beresford
was left back. He just gives Ginola the ball, because we're the sort of players going forward who are going to be direct, going to try and get crosses in, and that's what we had to do. You get Les Ferdinand in there, who is absolutely incredible to play with. Yeah. And the amount of bad crosses that he would turn into sort of good crosses. He was great at that. So it was always important to have the fullbacks behind you who would just constantly feed you the ball. You want the ball as quickly as possible, and especially if you know yourself that you've got the beating of the fullback, and you're just saying, right, give me the ball, keep giving me the ball, and you want fullbacks who do simplify it and just go, there you go.
Totally agree. But you also don't want it to complicate and ruin your game, do you? You know what I mean? Because last thing you need is when you've got the ball to see someone overlapping and mix your game up. Because when you pass the ball there, you've got to go back and do his job, and it's not enjoyable whatsoever. No. Being a winger who's got to track back, or being a wing back, it's just, for me, you look at Warren Barton, for example, cracking player, came through Wimbledon and just he knew his own job, he knew his abilities, and he knew what he was good at, which was defending, breaking play up, and passing to people who could play. I remember Neil Ardley at when he came to Cardiff, that Neil Ardley spoke massively highly of him. And just said how good he was, because Neil played out wide of him at Wimbledon as a young kid, and he always said good things about how he was brought up as a player.
Yeah, no, he was one that I obviously really enjoyed playing with, and he was good going forward as well. Because there's times where maybe I would have ended up inside a bit, and he would go on the overlap, and he would create balls or create crosses and create chances. So it didn't. I didn't want him doing it too much, as you say, because the last thing I want to do is be end up a right back every time.
Yeah. Obviously, you started. We'll start going through your career now, because I think what an amazing career. To play for Man United is the biggest football club in the world. To come through, you've mentioned some of the players to play, but what do you remember, Keith, about your first game and your debut?
Yeah, I'd been in a squad quite a few times, but that was going back where you're sort of three subs. And the manager, Alex Ferguson, was one that would involve us young lads at times with squads being away, and just that sort of experience of being in that first team environment. But I'd never ever, been on the bench or anything. And there was an FA Cup game. It was a Tuesday night, early January. And again, I was in the squad, went to Old Trafford. We were playing Bury in the third round of the FA Cup. And it was one of them I thought, a bit more experience for me. And I remember sitting having a pre-match meal, and Paul Parker was sat opposite me. And there was a wee doubt about, this is a time when you played a strong side. It's not like nowadays in the FA Cup. And Paul Parker was sitting opposite me, the manager was walking past, and he goes, "Is Giggsy fit?" and he went, "No, sure he can play," and pointed at me, and that was him, telling me that I was making my debut, for United, and you had, you even had Schmeichel in goals, and you had Dennis Irwin, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Roy Keane, Ince, who else? Sharpie, Mark Hughes, Cantona, Brian McClare. It was a strong side. Mike Phelan, I think, played. Mike Phelan did play because it was about 7 or 8 minutes gone, and I put the cross in, and he scored to make it 1-0, and then I think it was about 15 minutes to go, I scored the second, and we won the game 2-0. So it was sort of a dream debut. It's sort of setting up one and scoring the other.
It's funny, that you say that about Fergie, because exactly what Brian Robson did with us at Middlesbrough. That obviously learned that from Sir Alex Ferguson, and took us away to away games, took us to home games. Probably a different person, give us that experience about being involved with the first team, but not really getting involved on the bench. And then all of a sudden, he just throws you in without even telling you, but make sure your parents knew before. So it was it was all done underhand, but obviously very professional as well at the same time. So it's it just shows how many people copy what Sir Alex Ferguson's done, because I bet Mark Hughes will have took traits, Steve Bruce will have took traits from him. Obviously, Robbo did it. That it's just.
Well, you only have to look at what Alex Ferguson achieved. So if you're not going to take bits and pieces from what he did,
you'd be mad
into your managerial career, you would be mad. And Brian Robson was at Man United when I was there, and he was him and Mark Hughes were actually my heroes growing up. So I the sort of the youth team squad that I mentioned before, every one of us just looked up to Brian Robson. He was just Captain Marvel, wasn't he?
Captain Marvel, well, on and off the pitch, that what I mean. And I learned at quite a young age. Obviously, I'm guessing the same as you, Keith. That those lads can play on the pitch, but they can party off it, and they can give. You know what I mean? They're just. However good they were on the pitch, they were even better off it. As drinkers, as players, but then they'd always go to train the next day, or always be able to perform on the weekend, and it was just relentless. And it was just it was a credit to them all, really, because they just kept doing it, and they never stopped.
Yeah, no, Brian Robson was on a different level to anyone.
No, I've come across a lot of people who enjoy a drink, but he was off the wall. He was, in a good way. He was a good way. Yeah, he was a captain on the pitch, but he was the captain off it as well.
Well, you only have to look at the sort of career that he had, and captain of England, and I think he had about 90 caps for England, and 26 or 27 goals, which is some return as well. And you sort of think, how many caps would he got? If he wasn't injured at times, because he had quite a few injuries, but would have run through a brick wall.
Well, exactly. Well, the thing is, everyone says about the World Cup when he broke his arm, that potentially would have won the World Cup, and you can't argue against it, because you know what I mean, that his job would have been to stop Maradona. You see him walking past players. You know what I mean? I could probably guarantee that Maradona would not walk past Robbo. He would have took him.
He'd have took him out.
You'd have taken him down, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
I've always wondered, how players like Robbo, people like Paul McGrath, the ones with the reputations, even George Best, the reputations for the big drinkers. Like, how can you play to that level, being hungover and as hungover as they were? I've heard stories on the show of players having a beer, like being out on the Friday and then having a beer on the Saturday lunchtime before they go and play. Like, I struggle to get out of bed if I got a hangover these days. Like, how do you play professional sport at the top level and drink the amount they did?
I'm not sure Brian Robson would have been sort of drinking on a Friday night.
No, maybe not.
I don't know. Maybe George Best was just unique. He was just one of the best players that the game's ever seen, and he was just so talented that maybe he could do that. But again, I don't know that he would have been sort of doing that on a Friday night, possibly, but it's not something that I could confirm. But he was just off the scale in terms of the type of player that he was. I think just Paul McGrath obviously had more issues as well. It's good to see him back on the straight and narrow. I've seen him maybe about a year and a half ago, because what a player he was. How many players sort of leave Man United and then go to Aston Villa, and I think he got PFA Player of the Year that year, and I think Big Ron Atkinson absolutely raves about him because he never trained because of his knees, and that was just a pure talent what he had as a player.
I'm not going to compare the two, but I could not have trained all week and then played at the level that they played at. It was a continuation that you build up to the weekend, and to not train but then still be able to put in a performance like he did, and Ledley King did it as well to a certain thing, and like physically, yes, it was. The game's the most important part of the week. I get that. Yes. But the training also, it accumulates ready to build you up for the game, because if you can't join in for certain things, or to be able to be a major part, and that's what they both are, by the way. Especially Paul, a major part of a team which got so close to winning the title as well, by the way, at Villa. That that if he had a couple of players in and around him with a little bit more quality and a little bit more luck that year, he'd have won the league as well, and rightly so. It would have been a huge achievement.
Exactly.
Keith, you mentioned Eric Cantona a minute ago. What was he like, kind of away from the pitch? Just was he approachable?
He was very quiet, but he just had this presence and aura. Just when he walked into the dressing room,
Would you put him up there with the best of the best?
He was incredible to play with. He was one of them you always seen out in the training pitch when everybody had gone in. He was out in the training pitch, practicing finishing. Brian Kidd was the assistant, and Brian Kidd would just be, pinging balls in for him. He'd be controlling them and putting them in the back of the net. And he'd done that on a regular basis, where he was always working on his game, especially the shooting side of it. And he was a genius. I think everybody looks back to sort of when they won the league again for the first time in 26, 27 years, whatever it was. He was the missing part of the jigsaw, and you're sort of just seeing, how good he was when you look at £1 million back then.
But I said to Keith, though, and obviously not about Eric, because obviously I wasn't lucky enough to play with him, but like the Steven Gerrards, the Frank Lampards, the Rio Ferdinands, that I said it last week about in an interview that it's the arrogance, but arrogance in the right way, that they knew they were good enough, but they could follow it through as well, and I love that, and I see them now, and I see Rio on TV, and Michael Owens, and people see it as the, or maybe he's the big-headed or the boring or this or whatever, but I disagree. They had the arrogance and they followed it through to be the best that they could, the best that they could be, and they dragged others along with them as well, which is no mean feat, by the way. Because you can only look after yourself sometimes as a player, but they also dragged teammates, clubs, countries through that and more.
You've seen him as captain of Man United for a few seasons, and he wasn't captain, because he was vocal. Players just responded off him. You don't have to be. Most captains are ones who would be vocal, but he showed that you can be a captain without being vocal, because players just, as I say, responded to somebody like him, how good he was, and what he could do with the ball.
Did Fergie ever clash?
What's that?
Did him and Fergie ever clash?
No, not a chance.
Mad.
Fergie.
Two big characters.
I think you could always tell that Eric. Obviously we remember what he did. With a fan at Wimbledon against Crystal Palace that night. But you could always tell on the pitch sometimes that he was walking a tightrope. With some of his challenges. But I think Fergie realised that everybody has to be managed different. I think you had to be careful with Eric, because Eric is the sort of person who, could just walk away. If things weren't, going his way, or so Fergie sort of knew that he just kept on the right side of Eric. There was never really any arguments with him.
It seemed to me that it was like a mutual respect then, Whereas, they both knew where the line was and they didn't cross it, because both of them knew how important each other was for the club and for the team moving forward. That, we just said that about the Crystal Palace incident. Another, I think there's one at Swindon as well where he stamped on somebody.
Yeah.
John Moncur.
John Moncur, yeah. That it was always a loose cannon. He was always had an opportunity to lose it a little bit, but he'd always come back the next game, 3 games later after the suspension, and score the winning goal. The game after his ban against Liverpool when he scored the penalty. You can't write scripts like this. These kind of things that These are memories which you remember because probably wrong reasons because he's kicked a fan, but you remember him because he's a genius as well on the pitch, and these kind of things that just they live with you forever.
Yeah, well, you think about it, I think it was an 8-month ban he got that time.
Yeah.
As soon as it was available again, he was back.
Yeah, the next day.
You sort of think 8 months out, or managers would maybe put you on the bench, bring you on for the last 10, 15, but not with Eric. He was straight into the team again and produced a performance. Yeah,
which is it's just phenomenal. It just shows just how good an individual can be. Because you just said there, Keith, nowadays you'd probably do fitness tests, you'd play for the reserves, the 23s, the 18s, it'd just be endless, wouldn't it? And then all of a sudden,
exactly.
You might get put in the first team towards the end of the season, but when you're that good and you're that elite, then you can walk into any team, anytime, any day, and that's a credit to him, which is great. Obviously, being at United, Keith, obviously we're going through all these good players that you played with, which is fantastic. But what comes with that is you don't get to play as many games as you want. So, how frustrating was that as well? Because obviously I've been there when you play with world-class players, but you don't get an opportunity sometimes to get the minutes on the pitch that you think you deserve, or probably know you deserve.
Yeah, well, it's funny actually when I actually left the club. I'd played the previous league game and I'd played over sort of Christmas and New Year. So I was sort of starting to play a bit more than what I had been, although I'd been involved quite a lot. And then with the transfer, it sort of just came out of the blue. It was unfortunate for me because out of those sort of 8 players that I mentioned earlier that signed professional contracts, 7 of them were English and then I was from Northern Ireland. But because of the European ruling at that time, I was classified as a foreigner. And you only had to look at the sort of squad that Man United had in Europe. In Welsh, Scottish, Irish, Northern Irish, we were all foreigners. So you're talking Dennis Irwin, foreigner, Schmeichel, Keane, McClare, Hughes, Giggs, Cantona, Kanchelskis. There's 8 already, and you can only play 3 of those. So he really, I don't even think I mentioned Mark Hughes there either. He realised then that he needed an English striker.
Yeah. What a rubbish rule, though, Keith. You know what I mean? Because I know. I get. Why they changed the rule, because it's ridiculous. We're all part of the UK, and it's outrageous, isn't it? It had an impact on your football club. You as an individual not playing as many games in Europe, and probably 5 other lads who just mentioned there, by the way, who should and could have played week in, week out in Europe.
Yeah, well, exactly. We sort of, you're in the, European. Was it called the European Cup then, or the Champions League? I can't even remember.
Yeah, European Cup, European Cup and the Cup Winners' Cup, wasn't it? Is the Cup Winners' Cup? Which,
but when you have those sort of players, and all those players are going to be ahead of me, and all those sort of young lads who signed professional contracts with me, they were involved. They were getting games in Europe, and I was sort of just unfortunate that I was classified as a foreigner, and I think because Alex Ferguson wanted a striker at the time, and Andy Cole was the hottest property about. He made an inquiry, and Kevin Keegan sort of said that the only way that the deal would happen was if I went the other way, and I think he originally turned it down, and then he went back to him and tried to get Andy Cole, and again he says, look, only if he gets me. So we were actually playing a game away against Sheffield United in the FA Cup, and I'd played the previous league game. We'd beat Coventry at home 3-0, and I thought again I was going to play, and it turned up the ground. Squad was announced, team was announced, subs were announced, and I wasn't involved. And then Fergie pulled me to one side and said, look, we're in for this striker at Newcastle, but the only way the deal's going to happen is if you go the other way. He says, have a think about what you do, and I'll speak to you after the game. So I remember sitting beside Ben Thornley watching the game, and I was going to sort of Bramall Lane thinking I'm going to be playing, and within a quick 5-minute conversation I'm thinking about leaving the club. It's crazy how quickly that can happen. But I always I'd played against Newcastle 4 times that season. We played against them in pre-season in a tournament at Ibrox, and then I played against them at Billy Bingham's Testimonial. I played against them in the League Cup up at St James's, and then I scored against them at Old Trafford in the league. So I'd 4 times against them, and I'd obviously done pretty well because I'd caught Kevin Keegan's eye. So I just remember the atmosphere the night when we played in the League Cup up at St James's. You know, the Geordies are you know, incredible people, great fans. You know, and I was thinking, well, I'm going to a club here with Kevin Keegan as manager, and I thought, well, I'm not playing as regularly as I want to be. I'm 19 years of age, you know, so I agreed to go. But again, if I'd have sort of turned the deal down, you know, Andy Cole would never have ended up at Man United. You know, that's the way it was. And then I went to Newcastle, and then 6 months later, Andrei Kanchelskis left Man United, and the whole European ruling was changed again as well. So I remember sitting at home when Alex Ferguson rang me and tried to get me back. So they bid $4 million to get me back, and Newcastle turned it down. So it could have been oh so different.
Yeah, I totally agree. So how did it make you feel then? Obviously, the nice words that Kevin Keegan had obviously told Sir Alex Ferguson, that the only way the deal was going to go through if you went. Obviously, you just said there you must have made a good impression. Well, you obviously did make a good impression and more, which speaks words about you as a player.
Yeah, I know for somebody like Kevin Keegan to say that about you, you know, even when he was doing his interviews, you know, everyone will remember him coming out onto the steps of St James's, and there's not many managers would do that, you know, and they had a go at him, and you know, I don't know whether people maybe just thought I was seen as a direct replacement, because people maybe didn't know that much about me, but you know, being a direct replacement for Andy Cole, but you know, he made that, you know, very clear on the steps that night that wasn't the case. He says he had, you know, plans for the club. And he said to him, "You have to trust me." And as soon as he said that, they did. You know, the fans just shut up, and they did trust him. And never mind, he went out the following summer, and 6 months later, and got, you know, Les Ferdinand in. You know, who was a great success up there.
Well, obviously, I'm with being from the northeast. I remember that interview very, very well. You know, I mean, you got supporters who were irate, upset, angry. Saying not very nice things to him, and you know what I mean, like you say, you know what I mean, every other manager would have got chauffeured away, just hidden away, never coming out. But he stood on the steps on his own, not with no backing. You know what I mean? Anything could have happened, and just to say, just believe in what I'm doing. You know that he knew exactly what he was doing. You know that. You look at Andy Cole. Yes, Andy Cole, legend at Newcastle, scored all these goals, but he had a vision. He had a vision where that club was going to go. And the players you just said there, Beasley, Les Ferdinand, future Alan Shearer. You know what I mean? He knew exactly where he wanted to take that football club. You know what I mean? Asprilla. He knew exactly where it was going to go.
I think if you look at where Newcastle were when he took over the club, they were very close to getting relegated to the old third division. Then within 4 years. You know, we're challenging for the Premier League, and should have won the Premier League.
Yeah,
you know, so incredible what a turnaround. You know, and it's important that you've got the right owners. You know, at Middlesbrough, you know, Steve Gibson is a great owner, because I think he gives the right backing to managers. He gives them time. So John Hall, the whole family were the owners of Newcastle, and whatever Kevin wanted, Kevin got. You know, and you know, you're fortunate when you've got sort of, you know, the backing like that, because other clubs don't necessarily get the same backing that what Kevin Keegan did. And as I say, Steve Gibson's done it for years at Middlesbrough, giving managers the right backing.
You mentioned Tino Asprilla there, Keith. I wanted to ask you a bit about him, because for me, on talent alone, I think he was really one of the most talented strikers to come over and play in the Premier League. Obviously, you played alongside him. The things which kind of spring to mind with him sometimes are the things which are not necessarily like a what's the word, like a positive memory, like a goal or an assist. It maybe is more of his kind of his demeanour. But yeah, you know, he had two Champions League assists against Barcelona. Scored some absolutely incredible goals. What was he like as a player, as a teammate, do you think he was good enough on talent alone to be one of the best in the world? And why do you think he didn't go on to do that?
Without a doubt. Keith,
do you remember his debut?
Yes, at Middlesbrough.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've never seen anything. If any of the viewers were there, I mean, my dad was there. If any of the viewers were there, I've never seen anything like it. Do you remember the fullback who marked him that day? It was Chris Morris. So Chris,
he came on a sub actually because he actually came on for me.
Did he come up for you?
Yeah.
Well, I remember because he came. He was warming up, Si, and he had the gloves on. It was a freezing cold day, by the way.
Oh.
It wasn't a very nice day. He came on a sub, and he came on I think he came on the left or the right, but he ended up on the left hand side just at one moment. And Chris Morris was at was Republic of Ireland right international right back. Oh my God, he ripped him a new backside.
He did
for about 20-25 minutes.
He did.
I felt sorry for Chris. So sorry for Chris.
Even the cross that he put the cross in for the winning goal. Steve Watson scored the winning goal, but he Cruyffed somebody over on the left hand side and whipped it in. And Tino's problem was, you didn't know what he was going to do next at times, and sometimes you got the impression he didn't at times. So he was a little inconsistent, but on his day he was incredible. He was great. He was a great lad to have about the dressing room. I'd have been friendly with him. He'd have probably been more friendly with me than any of the other, players. That we got on great, and we still speak now. He FaceTimes me now and again from Colombia. I need to actually FaceTime because when he actually just rings me normal, I can't understand a word he's saying. I need to be able to sort of lip read at times. But he was a great character, absolutely incredible, and he's remembered for that the Barcelona game that night where. It was the best game I've ever played as well. Putting in two of the crosses for him.
Yeah. But the thing is, okay. You just mentioned there, that people remember that game for him. But obviously, I remember the two crosses you put in for his two goals, and yes, they were both fabulous goals he scored. But just the delivery, And let's be honest as well. Barcelona had a world-class side out. They had the best players. Of the world at the time. They had a great side, great manager, great coach.
Yeah, I think I think I was quite fortunate in that. We're going back to 1997, and with Sky Sports, in the later years, you used to get maybe 4 or 5 Spanish games a weekend. Back then, you got them now and again. So. I knew who the left back was, a guy Sergi, who was the Spanish left back too. But I think the first opportunity that I actually got when I put the ball in for the first goal, I didn't really do an awful lot. Just sort of received the ball and just knocked it out of my feet a few yards, and I got there first. And from then I just knew that I had him. So every time I got the ball, I just made sure that. I got it out of my feet, and as I say, I was quicker than most sort of fullbacks. And if that's the case, and there's grass in front of you, you can get it out of your feet. The third goal, his hat-trick goal. I've maybe ran 50 yards with it, but in that 50 yards, I've probably touched the ball 3 times before I crossed it, because it was a case of just getting the ball out of my feet. And They were a great Barcelona side. Not one of the greatest, but when you look at the players they had, like Figo and Rivaldo, little midfielder De La Peña was a class player. Luis Enrique, who went on to manage them there a few years ago. So they had a very, very good side, and here we were, our first Champions League game, 3-0 up against Barcelona, and I know they came back and made it 3-2, but it would have been an absolute travesty if we didn't win that game because of the sort of way we played that night. And bear in mind, most people sort of think about that game, a 3-2 win, they go, Kevin Keegan, and it was actually Kenny Dalglish was manager that night.
Yeah, but and the thing is, everyone, and that's the thing. So you just said there, Keith. Obviously, is that the best you've ever played in best 90-minute game you played?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's a game when I go back to Newcastle. It's the first thing that people will say to me, Newcastle fans. And Newcastle fans, they've had their ups and downs over the last sort of lot of years. But I think because I played in a team which was entertaining, and the football that we played in front of the supporters at St James's Park, is something that those people will never ever forget. Because here we are, we're going for the Premier League. We came second in the Premier League 2 years in a row. So they've had their ups and downs. So it's a time that they'll always remember. And our first ever Champions League game. And I think if you're going to pick who you're going to pick against, that you're going to have your best game against. You're going to pick you're going to pick a Barcelona or Real Madrid or something.
Too right.
Dreams,
I was
very
dreams are made of,
fortunate.
Do you find it surreal then, Keith, that the fans don't forget? You know what I mean? Because it has been a long time. You know that obviously. You know what I mean? And I say the same thing about my career. That obviously I scored the winning goal in the playoff final, which no one can ever take away from you.
Yeah.
And I think that people always say we won't forget, but they haven't forgotten. It's just mad how people just don't forget.
No, it's crazy, because when I go back to sort of Newcastle, and then you sort of, people of a generation obviously were there, and then they've got their kids, and they're like, he won't remember, but I've showed the videos of this game against them, so it is true, and the Tory people are like,
the mad, aren't they? You know what I mean? Home and away though, I've never seen, especially like you just said there, in the ups and downs, especially recently, probably over the last 5-6 years, that they still get 52,000 fans home. They still take 10,000 fans away from home. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
everybody, black and white in the town. It's just absolutely fanatical.
They still get 52,000 even when they're in the Championship.
When they got promoted, in the first game of the season when they played, I think they played Plymouth Argyle, and they played at home, and it was just ridiculous. It's I just can't believe how passionate they are about their football club, and they back them. You know what I mean? They back them and they back them and back them, and that's why Mike Ashley got involved, because he saw it as a business decision to make loads of money.
I think in terms of somebody coming in and buying that club, it is a gold mine. That club could easily go and do what Man City did, or Man City have done. And they're a bigger club for me than Man City are. They fill their ground every week. They've got great history, and I know history isn't everything, but when you have the support that they have, if they had 70,000, 80,000, they'd still be, selling that as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then on top of it, you've got shirt sales, you've got the TV money, which is just outrageous as well. You know what I mean? So for anybody wanting to take it over, it's just that if somebody got hold of that club, for me, they'll definitely win the Premier League, because they've got everything in place ready to win it. You know what I mean? That's from training ground to, you know what I mean? And being a Middlesbrough fan, it's it'd be heartbreaking to see them probably win the league, but they deserve it. You know what I mean? For everything that they've been through in the last 15, 20 years, they probably do deserve it.
Yeah,
more than anybody.
Absolutely.
That's why everyone got so excited, wasn't it, about the Saudi owner potentially coming in recently, because everyone knows it's a sleeping giant just waiting for someone to put some money in, sign some big players, and it's just there, ready and waiting.
But you're on about this. You're on about the infamous Kevin Keegan, Sir Alex Ferguson rant. Where you've got to go to Middlesbrough and win something, and you know what I mean. And I just love it, and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Because they both knew each other's buttons to press, and Man United were never ever going to Middlesbrough and not winning that game. By the way, it was just that was all set up.
You see the way we were talking about remembering things there. You remember, obviously Kevin Keegan's rant there after we'd won that night. But I feel really aggrieved, because I scored the winner that night and nobody remembers.
That's the goal, Keith. See, that's terrible, isn't it?
What did the players think of that when Kevin Keegan had that outburst, rant, whatever you want to call it?
Well, the thing about it was, it was the third last game of the season. This was the Monday. We had another game on the Thursday, and then we had a home game against Spurs on the Sunday. So we were actually on the coach, and I think somebody was on the phone to home, and they mentioned that they'd had this real rant on the TV. So I never seen it until the next morning, and then it was one of those, we were in training and that. I think we had the next day off, or maybe in for a warm down. We came in Wednesday. I can't, remember. But the boys were just taking the absolute mick out of Kevin Keegan. That's how it was. And that's how you could get on with Kevin. He loved the banter around the dressing room. He had Terry Mack with him, who loved the banter too, and it was just a fun place to be about. But it was just it just got to Kevin a little bit too much there.
The thing is, okay, it's rightly so as well, though, because you know what I mean, that he was under so much pressure, and you know what I mean, and he was getting goaded by reporters about this and whatever, and then Fergie, and you know what I mean, and Sir Alex was coming out with, you know what I mean, about that certain clubs weren't trying against certain teams at certain times, and Listen, we all know that we all played the game and we all wanted to upset everybody. If we were playing Newcastle, we wanted to win, not because it was Newcastle, but we just wanted to. You wanted to be the team to stop someone else winning something, because that was all we had to play for as a Middlesbrough player. That, you know what I mean, our cup final was stopping someone else winning something.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, everybody knows it was mind games because, you know, there's not going to be a team that goes out and doesn't put it in. You know what they have, and you know the disappointing thing for us obviously that season was we were 13 points clear and we didn't win the league. You actually only have to look at our home record. 19 games, we won 17. We lost at home to Man United. Eric Cantona scored, and we battered them that night. Peter Schmeichel got man of the match, and then we drew our last game of the season. So out of a possible 57 at home, we had 52 points, which.
Outrageous.
You know, great for the fans, you know, coming in and watching that week in, week out. And even, as I say, when we did lose to United, you know, it's a game that we should have won. And we were 4 points clear at the time. And even if you don't lose that game, you know, the momentum just swung then. And then you can look at other games, you know, losing away at Liverpool 4-3 in the last minute. And we're 1-0 up with sort of 6 or 7 minutes to go against Blackburn, and we lost 2-1. And you know, you can look at certain, you know, things over the season, but for me, the one that really changed it was losing at home to United when arguably we should have won the game.
Well, people are on about 6 pointers, aren't they? You know what I mean? That was, I remember the game. That, you know what I mean? He did everything. You know what I mean? Some of the saves he made from Ferdinand was outrageous. You know, and then even the goal from Eric. You know what I mean? It wasn't he scored miles better goals in his life. He rolled down his shin and goes in the corner, and you know what I mean? But they all count, I suppose, and it is what it is. But no, it's important games and moments in seasons, I guess.
For me, you know, the league table never lies, but you know, for me, it probably did that year because you know we played the entertaining football all season, and you know, I suppose you can look at it and go, you know, was there enough experience in our sides, you know, of winning leagues, and all we had was Peter Beardsley had won the league at Liverpool. The rest of us, we hadn't. Man United had been winning them, you know, before that. So you know, it was disappointing. But I think start of that season, if you had said to any Newcastle fan, we have a chance of winning the league on the last day of the season, they would have taken it.
And I think that's key, isn't it? I think it shows how much the club has evolved or had evolved at the time, and who they were fighting and achieving with. It was just a joy to watch, great joy to watch these things, and you should all be proud because you know what I mean. And you know what I mean. It'd be great for you to emulate and see Newcastle win it, because everyone who's played for Newcastle in the past have all played the part up to that. Up to that chance, you know, it's great. Yeah, it's great. Obviously, Keith. Obviously, things haven't all been plain sailing in your life and within your career. So obviously, you brought a book out. Obviously, a high profile book. What was the thought process in obviously telling the whole story about obviously the high profile problems?
Yeah, no, I mean it's just something that I was approached about. My agent sort of said that it would be a good idea for me to. You know, because you have a lot of stuff on the front pages over the years, and you know, obviously there's truth in some things, but there's, as you know yourself, there's a lot of nonsense wrote as well. So I wanted just to get, you know, the full story out there. You know,
the true version,
awards and all, you know, version, and in terms of, you know, how it's been received, you know, it's been incredible. It's been out 7 years now, like, but I've never ever.
Sorry to interrupt you, Keith. Was it difficult to relive some of that stuff, or
not
generally?
Not really.
Therapeutic?
Not really. You know, it's one of those where, you know, it could be a little bit tedious for me. You know, I was going and sitting with a ghostwriter, and we originally thought we'd be doing about 30 hours and then we'd be ready. And we ended up doing over 100 hours, you know, because there was so much material. You know, so much to write about, the gambling, and, you know, obviously took up, you know, huge chunks of it. You know, the title of the book, How Not to Be a Football Millionaire. You know, so it was, you know, quite boring and tedious for me at times. But, you know, the one thing that we wanted to make sure that we did was get it right, because you get one chance at this. You know, and originally we were looking at coming out in 2012, you know, November time 2012, and we realised we were sort of rushing it too much. So we sort of just reined it back in and thought, right, we'll make sure it's ready for next year. You know, as we say, you get one chance to do this, and you want to tell a warts and all sort of version. And I think with how it's been, you know, received and you know, about the truthfulness, you know, people can sort of see that. I think you get a lot more credibility, and you know,
I totally agree.
By giving the truth out there, and even, you know, talking about when I've finished football and, you know, had, you know, some depression stuff and writing about the mental health side of things, and it's such an important thing in today's society, the mental health, because
100%.
you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I think if you sort of talked about mental health and you know, you're suffering from depression or something, it would be seen as a weakness. I think now, with people coming out and talking about it, it's seen as a really brave thing now, and it's sort of turned full circle, and you know, that can only be a good thing, that people are coming out and talking about it.
No, I totally agree. And we've had conversations show after show, so haven't we? You know what I mean, about the PFA and about the role that I believe that they should do and they should be involved in, and just they should be there to do more, basically. You know what I mean, Keith? You mentioned that about a weakness, and I saw that, and I saw that during my career. Who did you have to go and speak to? You know what I mean? You wouldn't want to go and see a manager because you'd see it as that you don't want to play, or it's an excuse not to play. You know, but it wasn't. It was you didn't want to go, and there was no person you could go that cried to help to.
Yeah, exactly. And now, because, you know, it was a taboo topic, and now it isn't. You know, people are talking about it, and you know, you hear horror stories every day. You know, and I think, you know, as footballers, people just thought that, you know, footballers can't get this. They can't, you know, suffer from depression. You know, because everything's always, you know, seen as being rosy for them. You know, so it is difficult, and especially coming out of football, because nothing ever prepares you for that day where you go in and it's your last training session and your last game, and you're never going to, you know, have that buzz of playing football again and being in a dressing room. So yeah, no, it's such an important sort of topic at the minute, and I've actually joined a football club at the minute where I'm actually back playing, and over here in Northern Ireland. And it's all related to mental health. We're related to mental health charity. We're the first club in the UK to sort of be doing this. And you know, we're wanting to help and reach out to as many people as we can. And you know, we're playing in a league as well. And you know,
who is it, Keith? Just to tell everybody. So it's
a team called FC Mindwell. We've just formed, you know, over lockdown.
Okay.
Amazing.
You know, we got huge sort of publicity over the. When we had a launch, you know, Sky Sports, you know, we're covering it and everything. So we've had a lot of publicity to do it. We've actually big Roy Carroll's just signed for us.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So
I'll put some links up.
So it's such a big project to be involved in, but it's you know, you want to be competitive on the pitch, but I think for the club, you know, the big thing is off the pitch and how many people we can sort of help. You know, because we realise how important it is, and you know, this day and age.
Totally agree. You just mentioned there, Keith, about your last training session, your last game, and the transition coming out of the game. And how did you find and cope with that, not playing in that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I finished in the League of Ireland over here, and I was having a few problems with my knee, and I wanted to sort of. With the way the season goes over here, it finishes in November in the League of Ireland. You know, they play through the summer. So I was wanting to sort of just get through to the end of the season. So I had an injection in my knee, and it lasted about 6 weeks. It was great. And then I had to have another one. And 2 weeks later, you know, I was in all sorts of pain. So I realised then, you know, that was the end of it. So, you know, it was very low key, obviously, in terms of obviously playing over here and, you know, having that last training session and never playing again. Although, as I say, I'm sort of, you know, back playing now at the age of 45, 7 years later, which I didn't ever envisaged, and don't know whether it's a good thing or not at times, because my knee still causes me problems. But
it does.
You know, when you're being a sort of professional sportsman, you sort of want to get out there and give everything you've got. And sometimes when you get the age of 45, you have to realise that there are certain things you can't do now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny what you just said there about transition and not finishing obviously the way you wanted. We had James Coppinger on the show. Was it like last Monday? And obviously James is deciding to hang his boots up in the summer. He's 39. Is he 39-year-old?
39, wasn't he?
So he's going to finish his last season. So he's finishing on his own terms, and I love that because I'm the same as you, Keith. I wasn't lucky enough to finish when I wanted to finish. You know what I mean? My body finished well before my mind or I wanted to do. But it's just, you know what I mean? Nobody can ever take that football career away from you. You know what I mean? I was fortunate, luckily enough, to do what I've done and play some of the players and play grounds I played at. But part of me does wish that I was able to go out on a certain game or end of a season and just, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just, but life's not that kind at times. No. So you just get on with it and play the hand that you dealt with sometimes. And just
exactly.
Get on with it. Yeah, exactly. Difficult one.
Yes.
We got some amazing live questions, Si, haven't we? To finish the show, which is great. So I'll let Si trawl through all the questions, mate.
We'll go through these to finish off. So I had a lot of texts today asking me to have a rant about Cardiff, as if I rant about Cardiff. I don't know what they're on about. But I'm going to save that for Friday because that's the championship show. But Donna Perry asked, what is Keith's opinion of Gavin White? He seemed to have a really good game for the Northern Ireland recently. He scored, but is not getting a start for Cardiff at the moment. Do you think he has the potential to take the championship by storm if given the chance?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. He was probably a late developer and came across from Crusaders and done well and got his move to Cardiff. He's probably done a little bit like what Stuart Dallas did. Stuart Dallas came across from Crusaders and he ended up going to Brentford and then on to Leeds, and he's now playing Premiership football, and he's such an important part of the international setup. Gavin White came on against Romania, last week and got the equaliser. And he looks a real good player. I don't know the other options that they have at Cardiff. I wouldn't be aware of all the players in the Cardiff squad, but certainly, I'm surprised. I suppose he's maybe a little bit unlucky because I think it was maybe Neil Warnock who brought him in, and then they have another manager, so maybe this manager doesn't fancy him as much as what Neil Warnock does, but he's certainly got all the ability to play a huge part in the championship. He's done ever so well for the international setup, since he came in it, and it is sort of surprising that he's not featuring for Cardiff.
It's a great question, though, from Donna, because I'm a you know what I think of Gavin White. I watched him last year when I went to a Cardiff Middlesbrough game last year, and on his own won the game on his own. His runs, for me, he was probably getting the ball a little bit too deep, more in his own half than instead of hugging the touchline. But when he got the ball, he was beating fullbacks, he was causing problems, he was all over the place. And then all of a sudden, after 65, 70 minutes, Neil just brought him off, and you could see the anguish on all the supporters and just thinking, well, you're taking the best player off because they're winning 1-0. He wanted to shut up shop, and that was just the way that Neil Warnock did it. And you know what I mean. And unfortunately, your flair players then take a back seat because then the following week, I think he was away from home and he didn't play because they changed the formation. So as a player, how can you give your best week in, week out and be consistent? And if you're going to be in 1 week, out the team the next, because when you're playing well, you want to play every minute of every game. And like we said earlier on, Keith, that he's taking people in the first minute. He wants to do it to the 90th minute and get the best and be like Traore. And when you're brought off, it's so frustrating as a player because you can't give everything what you've got. It's a great question, by the way, because he's a very talented boy, and he'll get more game time now, Keith, because obviously the sacking of Mendes Lang. So he will. Yeah. Unless they buy somebody this week, he's going to have
He's got no money.
Hopefully.
Richie Thomas asks, who was the toughest opponent you played against?
Stuart Pearce was tough when I played against him at Forest. He became a teammate of mine at Newcastle, but he was one of them.
What was tough about him, Keith?
Well, he was one of them who he would encourage you to kick him, but it would give him an excuse to come and kick you even harder.
That's like, it's madness.
I know. I mean, I wasn't sort of.
You weren't shy though, Keith, were you?
No.
You'd have given one.
Yeah, of course. I wasn't afraid to sort of get stuck in. You know, I wasn't
that
sort of
fits into the next question, actually, which is well done, Andy, because I don't know if you've seen this one, because it's on YouTube. But Gaz asked,
I've seen it.
Keith Gillespie grabbing Gary Neville by the throat, obviously is in the thumbnail, I think. Was there a previous story behind that confrontation? And also, what were the Neville brothers like? Because they had the reputation of being...
I haven't seen the picture. Grabbing Gary Neville?
I think it's Gary Neville. Let me just check now.
It wasn't Gary. Was it Gary Neville? Was it? Wasn't it? It wasn't Gary.
It
Was
might
it?
be someone different.
Was it Stephen Hunt?
No,
when I got sent off?
Yeah, it was. I've seen one with with Reading. Yeah, it was.
Stephen Hunt.
That's interesting me now. I thought it was a Man United player, but
no, definitely not. Because I got on well with Gas. He's never had a problem with Gary.
He's too nice, Gary.
Yeah, exactly.
What were they like? The Neville brothers.
Yeah, they're both the ultimate professionals. You know, Gary was. You could see, sort of Gary, you know, was more outspoken than what Phil was. Although Phil's obviously, you know, doing a lot of media work now and obviously had his time with the England women. But Gary was always sort of vocal. He was probably the most vocal out of the boys that sort of came through. But you know, he was great lad. You know, I enjoyed playing with Gas. You know, again, because he was one of those players who he sort of knew his limitations, and you know, he gave you the ball. You know, you only have to look at his partnership with Beckham. Yeah. Just give him the ball, and he'll whip crosses in. But you know, he was still ultra talented, Gary. You know,
do you think he gets? Do you think he doesn't get the credit what he deserves, though? Because, like you just said there, because the people who probably don't know football think that he's not doing as good job as what he is.
Well, Alex Ferguson played him for however many years.
And Kevin Keegan did, and all the other England managers did.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, he's as good as anybody in terms of right back. I mean, you, as I say, kept things simple, but he could defend. And, you know, his partnership with Beckham, you know, there's plenty of times where, you know, he would go on the outside and get crosses into the middle. You know, so I'd say he probably was underrated because,
I would.
You know, he was a defender, you know, and defenders sort of don't get as much credit as what other players do at times.
So I found the photo which he was referring to. In fairness to him, it does look like Gary Neville from the one angle, but it's not Gary Neville. You can see the name on the back of the shirt. What was the story behind that little confrontation?
Stephen Hunt. Yeah,
you look angry.
Yes, well, I came on as sub, and I was just standing down the line. There was a throw in to be taken, and I just was getting this wee pinch in my midriff, and I sort of just swung the elbow out and caught him, and it was right in front of the linesman, and the throw in didn't even get taken. So I think it's the quickest sending off in Premiership history. It's down as 12 seconds, although unofficially it's put down sometimes as 0 seconds because the ball didn't come back into play. But I wasn't happy the way that he went down. I didn't sort of catch him that hard, but he sort of went down in installments. So on the way off, when I got the red card, I decided to go and attack him again. So I did. So I ended up with a 6-game ban. But
Eric Cantona taught you well.
Yeah, he did. But we appealed the 6-game ban. I got it down to 4. I don't know how, but we got it down to 4. But I think it's, as I say, it's the quickest send off in Premiership history.
Wow, that's a good trivia fact. I'm gonna say
that is. So we've gone through Keith's best game of his career, and now and
quickest.
That's quality.
That's the quickest. Yeah.
So Jack Taylor said at United and the famous youth winning side, Giggs, Scholes, Beckham, etc. Did anyone surprise you that their career was as good as there is anyone, or is there anyone who kind of missed the net or didn't achieve their potential?
No, I think, you know, when you sort of have, you know, first year apprentices who just come to the club, you know, and obviously you've got 2 years to try and prove yourself. Normally you wouldn't get as many as 8 signing professional contracts, so you know the club didn't really miss anyone. I suppose the only one they really missed, you know, who went on to have a really good career was Rob Savage. You know, Rob.
Yeah.
Rob wasn't off. I don't think he was offered a professional contract. Went to Crewe and then made his way up the leagues again. And Leicester, Blackburn, Derby. So probably Sav was the only one that they sort of missed. But we know Sav in terms of the type of player he was. He was a striker when he was in the youth team because he could run all day. He would chase fullback and back again, and just do doggies all day. He was so fit. But I suppose, was he good enough to as you've seen him grow older, to play for Man United? Probably not, because of the players that they had. So, Man United very rarely, miss the players in terms of, the ones coming through the system.
Yeah. Al Baker said, "Hi guys, did you ever have the Fergie hairdryer during your time at Manchester United, and what made Fergie such a great manager?"
I never got the hairdryer. Fortunately, I was fortunate on one occasion when I thought I was going to get it, because on a Friday night I'd gone out to. I wasn't in the squad on the Saturday. We were playing Liverpool at home, and I'd gone to meet friends, and ended up back in the hotel my friends were staying at. Couple of bottles of beer, and I was walking around the corner to the sofas in this hotel, and I got about 10-15 yards away as I walked around the corner, and Alex Ferguson was sitting on the sofa, and I just stared at him because I couldn't believe it, and he stared back, and I just turned and legged it, and I didn't see him on the Saturday at the game, and then on the Sunday we had it off, so I got into training on Monday, and he said, I was sitting in the changing room, and Brian Kidd came down. He says, "The manager wants to see you." So ventured upstairs, and the only thing he said to me was, he said, "Sit down," and then he says, "1 week's wages for telling the truth, 2 weeks' wages for lying." And I said, "Look, boss, they weren't my drinks," and he went, 2 weeks' wages, and that was it. He just sort of cut me down straight away. I'd get out of the office, and after that, there was never any problem. He never sort of held it against me, but it was at a time when I thought, he would go absolutely mental at me. But fortunately, he wasn't too bad.
Quality.
Good stuff. Okay, we're way over time, but it's been so much
Flew
fun.
by.
So we will. I'm going to do one more question. Michael Lynch asked earlier on. He said he was wondering what the driving force behind your youth player development, and what do you think is the most important quality for a youth player making it to be a professional?
I think
Good question.
The manager we had at youth team level, Eric Harrison, was absolutely
Phenomenal.
Incredible.
He's got a great reputation, though, Keith. He's got an unbelievable reputation.
And didn't Giggsy bring him in at Wales?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
At some stage, or Mark Hughes maybe it was, because everybody just loved Eric. You were scared of him. He was one of them you were very scared of. But there was times, I've even had this conversation with Ben Thornley. Ben was talking recently about a game we played away in the A team for the A team. We played Tranmere Reserves away, and we won 5-2, and I scored 2 and set up 2. And he says he always remembers we're coming in the changing room after the game, and he absolutely went through me, really give me a hard time. And as I say, I scored 2 and set up 2 out of the 5 goals. And, you sort of look back on that, because there's times where then I've come in and I've played bad, and, you're expecting, him to have a go at you, and he never did. And you look back on it now, and we talk about it, and we go, that was just character building. Eric would just do that, where he would think, right, this week I'm going to give him a hard time, see what he's made of, and it was great for us. You didn't realise it at the time, but I think coming through, it's important you sort of work as hard as you can. It's pretty simple. If you have enough talent and you work hard, there should be no reason why you don't make it.
I totally agree.
And you need a little bit of luck along the way. You need to stay free of injury, and you look sort of back on some players, and they don't get that luck where they get injured very young, and unfortunately don't reach the heights what you expect them to. So there is a certain element of luck involved as well.
Top man, Keith.
Totally agree.
Really,
great way to finish.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
and
your
as
honesty.
Andy said, great,
just everything about him. It was a great show. I loved it. Thanks for your time, Keith.
Appreciate you having me on.
Top man.
Guys, give Keith a follow on Twitter at Keith Gillespie 7. Follow the Andy Campbell Show at A.C.E Footy Show, and A.C.E Podcast Nation at ACE_Nation. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Best way to support us at the moment. Massive thank you to Black Diamond Sports, as usual, for all their support. And, of course, sponsors of the Andy Campbell Shows, Bespoke Financial. Massive thank you to them. Guys, I know there was a lot of Cardiff questions. They will all be addressed on Friday in full. And I will do my best not to swear. But until then, we'll see you live Friday, 7 o'clock for the Andy Campbell Championship Show. Keith, it's been a pleasure. Andy, always
Totally
a pleasure.
agree.
And,
Cheers, guys.
We will
Cheers,
see
Keith.
you all
Thanks,
Cheers,
man.
guys.
next time.
My mummy and daddy have been talking about life insurance. It sounds like something to protect my brother and me, but I don't really understand. Then my Auntie Louise told Mummy about Bespoke Financial Teesside. She said they're a local company who helped her with her life insurance. Mummy got in touch, and because they're based locally, a man called Darren was able to come to our house. He was really friendly. Darren stayed for a cup of tea and made it all really easy to understand. He said that life insurance will protect our home and family if anything bad were to happen. Like if Mummy or Daddy got sick, then we'd get enough money to take care of us, and our house would be paid for so it wouldn't get taken away. After an hour, Darren said goodbye and Mummy and Daddy seemed a lot happier. Once it was all sorted, we could all relax and watch a film together as a family. I don't know why they didn't do it sooner.